I finally got a chance to sit down and finish Deathloop, and honestly, it didn't click with me as much as I had hoped it would. This was a game I was really looking forward to since its unveiling years ago at whatever event it premiered at, and then I got even more excited to play it after finishing Prey earlier this year and absolutely loving it. I was so excited that I used a VPN to set my location to New Zealand so I could play the game a day early, which you can too with NordVPN. Using my link and the promo code in the description below, you can get a discount on a 2-year plan. Unfortunately, it was pretty unplayable at launch due to bugs and terrible performance, so I held off until the first big patch that was 11 gigabytes. It initially seemed like it fixed the issues, and in some cases it did, but then eventually most of the bugs crept their way right back into my game and really dampened my experience. It took me longer than I wanted to finish this game due to the fact I had no internet for 2 weeks, and the game would not allow me to boot it up and offline. It would just give me this message and then never open. I was only able to play it after I used my phone as a hotspot, which I already was out of data for, just so I could launch the game. After that initial time, I didn't have to be connected to the internet again to boot it up, but it still pissed me off nonetheless that I had to even do this in the first place. Even after the patch, the game still runs at a level I would say is unacceptable with a PC with a 2070 Super in it. I had the most up-to-date drivers the entire time, and there was still tons of points with bad frame rates, screen tearing despite the fact that the game was in sync with my monitor's refresh rate with VSync on and with VSync off, tons of glitches like enemies disappearing into thin air right in front of me, blood being projected into boxes so it would completely blind me if I was shot in the face or attacking an enemy at close range. This one went away for a bit, then in my final session when I beat the game, it returned, but only at moments where the game started to chug, which seems odd. It's not even the case that I could only see it because of the choppy frame rate. Going back through my footage, it simply wasn't happening when the game ran well. When I started playing initially, I wasn't getting any frame rate issues. My biggest ones were sound related. There were horrible delays for everything and anything. It would make me feel like I was lagging because the guns would make a sound effect 2 seconds after I fired it. Then there was moments where it felt like I was passing over audio cue seams and the game did not know what to do, so the sound would cut in and out as I would walk up things like these stairs. I found these sound issues to make the game completely unplayable. At least with the 11 gig patch, it seemed to fix my sound problems, but then I started to get other performance issues that were here to stay for the entire game. The weirdest part is that the game would run worse at times for no apparent reason. In one loop, I'd be in an area and it would play perfectly smooth. Then in another loop in the exact same area, it would run 10 times worse and I couldn't tell you why. Funnily enough, the game ran best when I got to the observatory at the end of the game. It ran a smooth, stable 60 FPS and it just made me think, man, I wish this fast-paced first-person shooter action game would actually have ran well like it did here the entire time. So bad performance and bugs are one thing, definitely massive blemishes on the game, but those can be fixed in time. That was only one of the 2 major factors that led me to feeling like this game was middling. I think the game's UI and how it conveys/teaches you information is abysmal. Firstly, the menus, while stylistically appealing, are designed in a way that it is very easy to be overwhelmed, especially when you're still new to the game. Simply too much noise and congestion, with information scattered all over the screen. I felt like I was constantly overloaded on stimuli, and all the information could have been conveyed to the player in a much cleaner way. So many pop-ups and messages jumping from one menu with a sub-menu to another menu with a sub-menu for the sub-menus. There was points in the middle of the game where I would have 50 seconds of just pop-up messages trying to tell me something during gameplay. Some weren't on screen long enough to actually process what it was trying to tell you. This grinds things to a complete halt. This is during gameplay, mind you, and thankfully it wasn't in combat. That's not even mentioning what it's like during the opening hours in the tutorial. I think this game gives you one of the worst first impressions it could possibly give. Not only does it constantly bombard you with tons of messages, pop-ups, and gameplay pace breakers to show/teach you things, the tutorial section of this game is too long for its own good. It felt like it lasted 3 hours before I got to the point where the game really starts parts and you actually get to see what the game is like in a less scripted and handholdy method to show you things. And I imagine some of you right now are typing in the comments that you could just ignore this or turn off tutorial prompts, but you shouldn't have to. The game should actually teach you its systems and world without being overbearing, mind-numbingly boring, and completely pace-breaking. You shouldn't have to ignore the game because it does a terrible job of actually teaching you. Some of these tutorials are the same ones used in Doom Eternal, and if you watched my thoughts on Doom Eternal video or my Game of the Year 2020 video, you are probably wondering why I think the tutorial there is good, but not here. One of the biggest factors to me is that Doom Eternal system-wise is a lot simpler than Deathloop. Doom Eternal is still a mechanically rich game, but its systems are, here are your guns, here are their upgrades and attachments, and here are the enemies and weak points. I also think Doom Eternal timed them better. Usually there would be a cutscene introducing an enemy, and then as soon as the cutscene ended and you're back into gameplay, but before you get the chance to actually move, the tutorial message would pop up. Deathloop, by comparison, I have shown clips already of me in the middle of combat shooting enemies and a message will pop up interrupting me. There is also the fact that Doom Eternal just starts right away. It doesn't put you in this semi-handholdy, multiple hour long tutorial section that the game isn't actually like. You just pick up your shotgun and start blasting motherfuckers. But of course, after I wrote the entire review and mid-recording and editing the video, they released a second major update that changes some of the UI elements. This is one of the major things I dislike about modern games. The best way to play most games is to wait at least 2 years after it's done. If the game had de novo, it would most likely be removed at this point, and there would be tons of patches so you can play the game in a non-broken state. You are often punished for being an early adopter and buying the game at launch. Parts of this video will probably be completely invalidated by the time it actually comes out, and anybody viewing it in the future won't be playing the same game that I did. Which brings the question for me of what do I bring up in this video? Do I date the video by bringing up all these bugs that will eventually be fixed, or do I leave them out? They massively impacted my experience in a negative way that I feel like I do need to mention it, but it horribly dates my video, because for the rest of this game and this video's existence, they will be two completely different things. I know the devs do all they can to make these games as good and as playable as they are at launch. The devs are overworked and the games are rushed out the door before they're in a presentable state. And worst of all, there's nothing that we as the consumer can realistically do. Like this game, we are stuck in an internal loop of games coming out broken, people getting mad, and best case scenario they're eventually fixed, but sadly that isn't always the case. I want to play a game at launch and not have to worry about, should I wait 3 months or 2 years before all the bugs are fixed so I can actually play a good game? Should I have to worry about, is de novo going to make the game run noticeably worse and then 6 months later the devs remove it? Like they did with Resident Evil 8 after hackers and modders found out that de novo was the reason why all the Sisters Locust attacks were making the game chug like shit, and Capcom only released a patch to fix this somewhat after their balls got exposed live on stream. It's so frustrating because I do genuinely think that this is one of the best periods gaming has had in a very long time. There are obviously aspects that could be better, like I imagine most RTS fans aren't happy with how Command & Conquer and StarCraft are currently, and how their genre is basically dead. And Silent Hill fans have been dying for a morsel of an actual game. But there is so much unique and creative things constantly coming out that basically there is something for everybody. But things like this make it so hard to not think, man, games were better back in the day. And since we're complaining and talking about games being updated for the better or worse, here are some things I would like changed in the future. I think the main HUD is pretty bad. I am not a fan of it. It feels like something made for consoles with everything being bound to a D-pad. I would much rather have a standard hotbar of 1 to 0 like most PC RPGs like Prey have. You can simply make it a toggle option in the settings. Do you want the HUD to be like it is now, or would you like a more standard PC RPG HUD? They could even make boxes with items that you could put in your left hand glow if you're wielding something in your right hand that would allow you to dual wield. I also really dislike how aggressive the on-screen effects are when you are shot and your health is low. I really wish I could turn this shit off because it is so intrusive and makes the game hard to see at times, especially during the areas where it is sunset and the color of the game is mostly orange. It is just as bad as it was in Doom Eternal, which I also thought was needlessly intrusive and really wished the devs would remove, or at least give me the option to. That terrible first impression doesn't just pertain to how the game teaches you its systems, it's also in its gameplay. The opening hours have these few little things that compound with the poor performance, make you work really hard to power through and not just drop the game. If I did not love Prey as much as I did, I probably would have just dropped the game and never played it again and tried to possibly refund it if I could, instead of powering through it and getting to the parts where the game is actually very fun. That's what's so frustrating about this game. It does eventually pick up and get into the swing of things, and once that happens, it's actually very fun, but it takes way too long to get to. The guns in the opening hours were constantly jamming on me, which is ungodly annoying. The gunplay only starts to get really enjoyable once you get some purple weapons and slabs from visionaries. Trying to slide and aim down sights at the same time is basically unusable from my experience, because anytime I did it, I would just magnetize to the nearest cover, which in some cases would send me into a completely different direction from where I was aiming and sliding. The only thing it ended up being good for was disorienting me and giving me slight motion sickness from the whiplash of the camera swiping around in 180 degrees so it can magnetize to some broken cover in the environment. Turning off the auto lean around corner setting doesn't help this either, as it still did it after I turned it off. I've tried up until now to sprinkle in that this game isn't all bad. I think the voice acting in the cast is really good. I always love a group of eccentric weirdos that you have to kill. Colt and Juliana play off each other in a really fun way. I love the aesthetics of this game, specifically all the posters and promotional images. Once the game finally lets you do your own thing, it starts to become really fun. It begins to feel like an immersive sim. Setting up all these events to get everybody in the right place at the right time so you can kill them all in one go feels like what I love so much about the Hitman series, like stopping Otto's shop from being burnt down in the morning or drowning Charlie and Fia in their hideout when they go to meet up to have sex. The powers are also really fun to use. I love flying through levels with the shift ability. I felt like I was zipping through levels, cutting down anyone in my way, like that one chapter in Chainsaw Man. You know the one. This game really strikes a level of brilliance for a short period when you're going through loops setting up things like rigging Frank's fireworks to kill him or messing up the beer taps to draw out Alexis from the mask party. But then it started losing steam for me, as I didn't find hunting down passwords and puzzle solution objectives very fun. They're not nearly as engaging for me as sabotaging things. Getting the 3 passwords for the door to the rocket ship and the cassette tape passwords are the ones that I liked the least. The formula started to get kind of stale, like the idea alone wasn't enough to carry the game. It's not even that long either. It only took me 14 hours to break the loop. So that makes me wonder if it's simply the activities they have you doing that makes the game get stale because they're not interesting enough, or is it the core idea of the game that gets stale? I honestly don't have an answer for this. I'm not sure what it is about this game that couldn't keep me invested throughout its rather brisk runtime. That's another thing. Despite it not being that long, which I am happy about because I do prefer games that are shorter rather than bloating their runtime, it felt way longer than it actually was. Like I said in my review for 13 Sentinels, it was the shortest 30 hours I've ever played. Deathloop, on the other hand, felt like it was double my actual playtime. The more I stop and think about it, I want to say it's because some of the objectives in this game require you to do a lot of fluff to actually complete them. For example, to get Wenji to go to the party at night, you have to make a fake recording of Alexis telling her he can get her into the vault. To do this, you must meet with 2-Bit during noon and talk to him. He'll then tell you he can make a fake recording of Alexis if you find a real recording of his voice. So then you need to break into Alexis's room at his party at night, which is 2 segments of the loop from this one, so you either need to skip the evening section or do something else during that first before it's night. You break into his room, you find a code to a safe in the library, finish this loop, start a new one, go to the library at noon, get the recording, then take it to 2-Bit, which is a cute little attempt to mix up gameplay because the recording is constantly playing so you can't stealth through this section and take the recording with you at the same time. In reality, it just kind of makes it tedious since you can just lay it down on the ground and kill everyone and then go back and pick it up. Then you make the fake recording, you send it to Wenji, then she'll finally be in place to kill her for the perfect breaking of the loop attempt. This is the last visionary quest I had to do at the very end of the game, and the only word I would describe this as is tedious. Maybe it wouldn't have been so bad if I was doing it in tandem with every other one, but on its own, it felt like a real chore. I don't know, maybe it's because I don't like roguelikes all that much. But the final run where you actually break the loop was probably the most unsatisfying attempt of them all. It dawned on me when I was typing this paragraph that the final perfect loop of killing everyone in one go cleanly is supposed to be this big triumphant moment where you pull off everything you've planned and learned up until now. It felt like it wanted to be one of those moments in movies where you go, "That's badass," when the movie explains how a character planned everything from the start and it shows you in a montage, like in Guy Ritchie's Snatch. But in the case of Deathloop, I've been doing these kills for hours at this point, I knew I was going to blow up Frank with fireworks for 6 hours already. All the excitement and enjoyment of seeing it happen all in one go was completely deflated by the time I got there. The game simply didn't click with me the same way I've seen it click with others, saying how it's a 10 out of 10 in Arcane's best. I got the broke the loop ending where you jump, and honestly, I don't have any desire to find out what happens if you sit down to get the other ending. I doubt I will ever play this game again unless I want to get some footage, or I eventually do a retrospective on Arcane Studios' catalog. It's certainly not bad, I'd recommend playing it, but in like a year after it gets some more patches, removes de nouveau, and only when it's on sale. If anything, go spend your money on Prey instead. It's fantastic. It's got its share of issues, but what game doesn't? I still think Arcane is a very cool studio, so hopefully whatever they decide to make next grabs me more than this game was able to. If you've made it this far into the video, I just want to say thanks for watching as always. If you really liked the video, please leave a like and pass it around. And if you really like the channel and want to support it, maybe become a patron on Patreon. All patrons get access to videos a day early, along with a $7 tier that gets to watch incomplete rough cuts of upcoming videos, like the first 57 minutes of the upcoming Yakuza 2 retrospective. I'm now going to shout out all of my $5 and up patrons who really help support the channel. Bully, Akita Fishkiyama, Lucy the Fox, The Unthinkable, Bluntman, Elliot Morton, Lotto, Nathan Redding, Nemphy, Papaya-chan, Quartz, Slemph Tingle, Walkman, Ben Johnson, Chichometrius, Dusty the Zombie, Ek Frazo, Filthy Fingers 69, Fish Kami, Justin Collini, Kevin Velasquez, Nicholas Pedinato, Onion Girl, Ruben Rodriguez, Starcasters, Star Fox, Some Panda, The FOE3, William Moore, and Steinco. Thanks so much, guys. As for what's coming next, not sure if it's going to be the very next video, but I am working on the Yakuza 2 retrospective. I also have a favorite games of 2021 video in the works. I don't know if that'll come out before or after the retrospective, but that'll come eventually. If you're a card game player of any kind, I have a TCG Player affiliate link in the description below. All purchases you make using my link will give me a small kickback, so just another way to help support the channel, along with the NordVPN link I mentioned in the beginning of the video. Follow me on Twitter to keep up to date with what I'm working on. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.